Hey everyone, welcome back to Real Talk NFT, where we talk all things Web3. Super excited to have on today Oh Thongsrinoon, who is just Chief Marketing Officer of Altava, a virtual platform defining fashion in the Metaverse. Welcome, Oh.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, before we jump into Altava, please tell me your background and what inspired you in Web3.
Well, actually, I've always been mostly entrepreneur, so technopreneur, I guess that's the word. So I've been part of several tech startups, some of which has gone to do well. It's good for them, and hopefully I contribute some to those success. And yeah, I think in 2018 I had an opportunity to join my first blockchain project out in Korea, actually, and so that was really my first foray into the space, and it was a completely wild west. I kind of sworn off it for a while after the crypto winter the first time around, and somehow it pulls me back in. So here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. You told me you're in Seoul, Korea. That's kind of like the forefront of everything Web3, in my opinion. I think the government there was the first to activate the metaverse for, voting or whatnot. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over there.
Yeah. So as you correctly pointed out, actually, I think what they made the news a couple months ago because they kind of put the entire city of Seoul on the metaverse. So supposedly, moving forward, you can start to do some admin stuff basic admin stuff through the metaverse. That's kind of like the goal. So that was interesting. And yes, to your point, I think obviously US is one of the big market, but I think a lot of people didn't know is that Korea is actually one of the largest crypto market in the world. And you just have to look at the exchanges and you can see that, top 2, top 3 Korean exchanges regularly rank in the top 10 in terms of transactions. So yeah, and the other thing that's also interesting is that recently, and I think because of K-pop, K-culture, Korea, especially Seoul, has become like one of the epicenter of fashion in the world as well. And I think LVMH, is doing the last show here, and Gucci as well. So yeah, it's an exciting place to be, I would say.
I was just there in March for my honeymoon. I know exactly what you're talking about because I and my wife, of course, we love K-pop music, K-pop shows. It's on the radio now in the United States. It's on Netflix. It's infiltrated everything. So you're absolutely right. Fashion wise, I see that the celebrities there, the actors, actresses there, musicians there are all like the global brand ambassadors for LVMH. I'm not sure if they have a secret handshake or what's happening, but it's good to see that you guys are in the forefront there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're merging that with your project, Altava?
Yeah, so I will try to speak on behalf of my founder. So but I think he basically sees that fashion and tech, is somehow will naturally merge. And this was like about 3 years ago, and somehow at the time he was actually creating more like a virtual world, and that kind of evolved into a metaverse, that we are operating today called Worlds of You. So yeah, I think there's definitely, that's his vision, right? And I believe that's the right vision, and that's why I joined the company because, and I obviously, the fashion part always makes things a bit more interesting.
Yeah, how does that? I remember seeing you guys on the news for working with big brands like LVMH, like Prada. How are you bringing that to the metaverse?
So interestingly, right? If you look back at Web 2, fashion industry was one of the last industry to kind of jump onto it. So I think that was a lesson learned for them. And what we find interesting from our own experience is that, fashion is actually one of the first industry to jump into the Web3 space. And almost every brand that we talk to, from Prada, Bvlgari, Fendi, you name it, they all seem to have Web3 as part of their roadmap, interestingly. Right. But having said that, I don't think for the most part, any of them know what that would look like. So I think the past 12 to 18 months, that we work with a lot of these brands to help them identify, what they can do in space. I think their, move into the space is just more like putting, a flag in the ground and just have presence there so they don't miss it like the first go around with the Web 2. But I think it's still to be determined, and they're still learning from the process. And that's kind of what we're seeing for the most part.
Yeah, interesting that you say they are the last, because I think in 2023, they're like the first ones making the big splash in 2023. I think you heard about the LV $39,000 LV NFT. Dior just is coming out actually, tomorrow with their Dior B33 sneaker that has a digital twin. Nike just teamed up with Fortnite to have the digital, sneakers. And there's so much more. Adidas, and then Lacrosse has, I'm just seeing a lot of fashion this year with NFTs and Web3.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, right, because I think it's almost like making up for the lost time, because Web 2, because like I said, in Web 2, they were the last to get in, and that's why they were one of the first to get into the Web 3 space.
That makes sense. Yeah, so they don't want to be left behind this time.
Yeah, exactly, I'm glad, because in some way I feel like there's a certain natural connection to it. And I think you kind of touch on one of the aspect which I find interesting personally, right? Which is the digital aspect, meaning that you have a digital twins to, your digital asset, such as NFT.
Yeah, that's something new to me, because in gaming, that's a lot of people are used to that, having the at least the digital version of it. But now we're hearing the phygital term being thrown around, which is having both, having the online presence as well as the offline presence of it. And I'm starting to see that more and more. What's your thoughts on it, since you're in the fashion world? What problems is that solving? What opportunities are there with that?
So let's kind of, I think that's a multi-parts question. So let me try to break that down.
Yeah.
So I'll take the first part first, which is like what problem it is solving, because that's really the fundamental questions. So obviously, when you talk to people, when it comes to just blockchain in general, right? People try to really kind of justify why they're here, and talk about different possible problems they're solving, fashion including. But for me, the most practical example of it, which I've seen work, is a proof of ownership, right? And I'm sure, many of your guests, when they come on and they talk about NFT, they also talk a lot about ownership, and I think that's especially applies to fashion, because piracy, or like fake, goods is like a multi-billion-dollar business, right? So
right.
And especially with luxury goods like LV bag or Gucci bags, in every country, including US and Korea, you have these secondary shops that are selling like these second, third hand, luxury bags. But how, so the question is like, how can you trust that that's the right bags? Because we know that nowadays, like the grade A fake is, really close to the real thing, so you have to be really good at spotting, the fake versus the real, right? Sometimes. So, and I would say like a lot of these boutique shops that you go to buy secondhand stuff, the trust is probably more on the owner of the shop and the fact that it's physically there than the actual knowledge of knowing if the goods are truly real or not, right? And I think having a proof of ownership follow the goods, while it would not completely prevent, like the problem, I think it would lessen the risk, right? Because, let's say I buy like this, wallet, and then, I sell it to you. So, on smart contract, then it will show the history of now you are the new owner. So, and you sell it to the shops, let's say, right? Then they would also know that, okay, now the shop is also the real owner. So at least they kind of know that, who's a proper owner of that goods at that particular time. Now, if the shops or the person, try to sell something fake still, that's kind of hard to prevent, to be fair, but at least you do have that history, right? That's on the ledger. So I think that's a really, interesting part of it. So now, to the second part of the question in my mind, right, is, digital that you just brought up. Because I think the first generation of NFT, people are talking about just purely PFP, right, as a main utility. And because of the FOMO and the hype, people just kind of all jumping into it head first, without considering, what does it mean, in terms of their investment, right? Because at the end of the day, many people buy NFT because they see that as investment. Um, and so I think, and the key things to most NFT are utilities, right? And I guess having like ironically, having a digital um, asset backing it probably gives it more value and more reassurance of the value of that goods, of that digital asset, such as NFT. So I feel like the evolution of NFT from the first generation, or just purely PFP, I think you kind of see more, asset-backed NFT, for this go round, right? For it to work. Because I think, the days of the pure PFP NFT, I think, will, I wouldn't say long gone, but it'll be a much tougher step.
Yeah, absolutely. The PFP wave of 2022 is not as bright as it is anymore. And thankfully so. I actually like purchasing NFTs with actual real world utility and use case. Fashion, definitely one of them. And definitely, I can't believe I didn't even see, how it could fix the authentication issue, because that's a glaring problem, right? Fake handbags. And in the US, fake shoes is huge, right? Fake Nikes, even that is a multi-billion-dollar industry of fraud, probably. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how they tackle that. I actually talked to someone recently that said in the manufacturing side, in time, that once they figure out how to do so, they can actually embed somehow, some way, the technology into raw material and the composite of these goods. They can make it in a way where we can read it on a blockchain. And that just blew my mind. It kind of went over my head, but he said that it was possible. So that would probably fix a lot of issues in the fashion world today.
Right. Well, sadly, right, the gray business is always quite enterprising and innovative in its twisted way. And they would always find a loophole, but I guess the idea is just kind of lessen kind of tighten the loophole. So it's just much more difficult and hopefully expensive to try to overcome that,
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the opportunities. I know you guys are doing things locally there with fashion and pop-ups. How's that been? Tell us about your most recent one and kind of the benefits of that.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, then I guess we have to talk about, maybe I need to articulate what, our NFT collection is first.
Yeah.
So to tie to your question, right? So you're probably referring to BAGC, which stands for Bored Ape Golf Club. So as the name probably implies, Bored Ape Golf Club is actually a derivative collection that we license from Bored Ape Yacht Club holders. Right, so the three main holders that we license the IP from are Elite Apes. So these guys are I believe they're the largest BAYC collective in Asia. Then,
oh wow.
Then Animoca Brands was also the other licensor, and lastly, the Sandbox themselves. So actually, Sebastian, who's the founder of the Sandbox, he personally licensed his own apes over to us as well. So from these 130 plus BAYC IP, we basically created a golf theme, NFT out of that, right? And then we put a lot of utilities, like the real world utilities to your point just now, to it to kind of give it more value. Because, we always look at it from the perspective of, if I'm the buyer, and I am, by the way, so, so myself and, most of my colleagues actually buy it with our own money too. So we have to kind of believe in it first and foremost, and we have to have, give it enough value, right? So a lot of the physical utility we attach to it are things like golf merchandises. And the other big thing that we attach to it is actually access to golf country club. So you could actually, play around at golf. And especially in certain countries, you could actually get into some of the most exclusive golf clubs that you otherwise wouldn't have a chance to get into. And, hot off the press, and, you're the first to hear this publicly, we're in the process of signing a partnership with a company that would give our holder access to, I think, golf club in over 28 countries around the world. So
wow.
That's something really exciting for us, right? So to the merchandise aspect of our utilities, right? That's kind of where the pop-up comes in, because so we are creating. So we actually within our group, we actually have a fashion design team, and this team is actually designing our first collection as well as our BATC branded goods, and on top of that, Hyundai. And I think in the US, most people know Hyundai as the car company.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I'm not sure when you're in Seoul, if you saw Hyundai department store, they also operate. Yeah, they also operate one. So they're one of the top 4 malls operator in Korea as well, because they're like a conglomerate.
Wow.
So car is just one of their businesses. Definitely not the only one. Hyundai Group is actually one of our investors. So, through that synergy, right, the department store business basically said, hey, why don't you guys, do a pop-up with us? Because, we regularly have this pop-up, and it would be great to have you guys there because, you have some really interesting stuff. So, so we, through that partnership, we actually did our first pop-up last year in October. And, we just did it again, a month plus ago that you just mentioned and referred to. And it was definitely interesting because at the pop-up, we actually sell NFT through the normal cost. So people can actually use credit card, buy the NFT, and actually get the loyalty points, from the department store as well.
Oh, wow.
And like I said, right, because we didn't have the goods, and so then we can expand our fashion line to not just have the goods associated to the NFT itself, but people can just buy those goods separately on their own just to extend the brand. So yeah, I think people find it definitely. We got a lot of crowd, and the sales went. I would say went pretty okay for us, but it's still part of the growing process. Right?
Wow. Yeah, that I've never heard of a Hyundai department store. Definitely never seen that. There's only cars out here. And great to hear that wonder investor, 2, that you're doing pop-ups, and, 3, onboarding people through regular, Web 2 means, through credit card. It's probably really hard to buy an NFT with crypto on the spot even. And I know we're just trying to figure out that hump there. But wow, yeah. So the fashion piece of it was for the Bored Ape Golf Club. And that's something that you created yourself with actual benefits to maybe potentially, like you heard here, access, a lot of golf clubs in different parts of the world. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think so we have 4 key utilities, right? I mentioned 2. I think the most important one, which I kind of didn't mention yet, but we felt really proud of, is what we call IP management. So with certain NFT, especially from Bvlgari, you can actually license those NFT just like you would any IP, right? So that part we offer to our holders as well, but we kind of take it a step further, because if I ask you today, even the holder of BAYC, right, in general, or CryptoPunk, how many of those guys have experience, doing IP licensing, right? I would say probably less than 10% would have that experience. So then what would the other 90% do, with their IP or to monetize their IP, which in this case is NFT, right? So that's why we also not provide just, so you can have option of handling that yourself, but we have a team in-house whose sole job is to actually go out and talk to brands and merchandises and help to then, license your NFT, to them potentially, right, on the merchandising. And I mean, obviously some of the service fee, but so that's something that we kind of are doing as well with our NFT, so I think taking it to the next level, I would say, on the IP rights management.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I would be interested in the future. To your point, I'm not a big fashion person, but having an expert handle that, and that being a big part of people's identity now, is probably very, very useful. I never saw myself as a creator before, stepping into the NFT space. But because of NFTs, I've actually seen myself more in that light now because I'm very involved with the NFT projects, different than Web2 companies, right? You're not really involved. Now you can be really involved in the decision making. I just saw this on Lacoste website, the fashion company. They said, be a part of our decision making for our brand. And the same thing with Fenty. Fenty is Rihanna's fashion line, and Rihanna's fashion line just did a collaboration with Roblox, and the same message there. They said, create our next line of products on there. And I'm seeing this happen in real time, like this week right now. And those are the things were never available before, where an average person like myself, or maybe a very influential creator, can be a part of these brands. And if not a part of these brands, building a brand for themselves, building a fashion line for themselves. That's more relevant today than it ever was before, right?
Absolutely. And and we're also, because our founder, he's also the holder of BAYC also, right? So we're also part of the this kind of BAYC Korea, right, which is a part of the larger network of BAYC Asia, and we've seen from that community, because we have a gathering with them as well, and we've seen what some of the interesting stuff that some of the members are doing with their apes IP, and I'm sure you've heard of Gordon Hungry, the burger chain, right? So,
yeah.
So like but outside of that, you have coffee brand apes, so you just have all sorts of products, kind of putting the apes on there. So it was interesting, to see.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's take a step back really quickly and just talk about more so you within Altava. I know you handle the marketing. What's kind of like your day-to-day look like? I know that you said we're still kind of in the testing phase of fashion and Web3, but just talk to the people who's listening, who's very curious and maybe they want to be active in the space, kind of what your roles are.
Yeah. So, because when it was a, bull market, my job is easy, I guess I would say. You don't have to do much and people get excited. But, obviously I would say since like the last 6 plus, actually 10 months, it's been much tougher, right? So I think we never look at ourselves as a Web3 company first and foremost, right? We see ourselves as a tech startup. So, and my founder, Andy, who, this is not his first go around. So, he made his exit before, right? So we have a pretty strong financial discipline from day one. So, he's very clear about, the P&L for a different team and team leader, right? Myself including. So, even on the best day, it was never like carte blanche of just spend, anything you want to spend, right? So, and obviously with the, winter market, with the bear market, I think we're even more it's even more challenging because, we have to be much more careful of our spending. Right? But at the end of the day, the ROI or the goal is the same, which is, how to keep the community, engaged, how to keep them excited, how to grow the community, right? And how to, because at the end of the day, community is almost everything, when it comes to a free project, right? They can make or break the project, if you do it right. So and obviously, it's much more challenging because you have a lot of FUD, going around, the past 6 to 8 months. So, it's sometimes just damage control, or to control the rumors. It's like, oh, people heard this or that. And it's like, no, it's not true. So, I think it's kind of balancing acts of kind of maintaining the existing community and try to then continue to organically grow them and get our names out there because, so quite thankful to be on your podcast for sure because we don't get our name out as much in the Western side of the world. We're a fairly known quantity out here in the Asia Pacific, not just in Korea and even the Middle East, right? But but our name starts to kind of make its way into the US and Western Europe. So being here is kind of part of my job too, I would say.
Yeah, no, we want to be over there. You don't want to come over here. All the crypto friendly people are migrating. All my friends who are throwing Web3 conferences are doing it in Hong Kong, Asia, Japan now. It's been a hot mess here. However, it is getting better. We have big financial firms just applying for a Bitcoin spot ETF. So the big boys might come soon again. And then after that is when, everything's going to flow back into the NFTs, Web3 and the Metaverse is how we're seeing this. So we're feeling a little bit excited, even though the excitement escaped us and went over to Asia.
Well, I've been keeping an eye on that too, right? I probably have a mixed feeling on it, but but yeah, I mean, on the good part is that it brings more spotlight to the sector and maybe give it so-called legitimacy to certain more legitimacy, right? But at the same time, I hope that it doesn't shift everything away from the retail investors completely, because those is here because of retail investors, right? In the first place, right? Before all the big guys come in, and so in an ideal world, right, things will be balanced, but let's.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Well, it's awesome. Well, it's awesome been talking to you about fashion, because fashion is not my expertise. Although because of NFTs, I've gotten better at one, art, because, art led the way with NFTs. And then two, fashion. I've gotten more clothes than I can imagine now because of the NFTs that I own. So tell us, just to wrap things up, kind of what's next for you guys. I know that you guys have, some NFTs called Second Skin. I know that you guys just launched land for your project. If you want to, you can tell us a little bit about that and maybe just what's next.
Yeah. So I would say, land is interesting for us because it's also talking about our next direction as a company. Right, because I think much earlier on in the podcast you kind of mentioned, I think, about creating, like, kind of being part of Fenty or creating their next collection, right? So one of the challenges that we see, that's related to us is actually creating, digital assets and making it interoperable with different world. Because if you look at the metaverse space today, there's really no dominant player, right? So,
Right.
So let's say if you're on the web 2, and you said, yeah, I want to make video, there's, just only like a handful of platforms that you can think of, right? TikTok, YouTube,
Right.
and, not, so it's kind of easy to know who you want to create for, but when it comes to like the metaverse or the open world, there's so many, right? And there's no single dominant one. So the challenge is like, every time you create asset and try to make it work with every world, it's actually a very time consuming problem, and it's not so easy, right? So we're creating a platform that's AI powered, that ideally would allow the creator to be able to say, hey, look, you know what, I'm creating this asset for, let's say, Light Beyond, one of your guests, to be as an example, but then how can I use this platform through AI to then port it to other worlds, easily without having to redo everything from scratch again, right? So this is something that, this is our next direction, and the platform that we're kind of, in development right now to do just that, right? To tackle that very issue. So yeah, I think that's, and, so to the land sale part, in a more practical sense, right? So the land, we look at the land as kind of, if you recall back those, old school, like farming, social game, like farming game, like Farmville, right? So having a land would kind of be something like where you can mine from different materials, right? And from these materials, you can then actually create, fashion item within our world first, and when you create these items, you can then tokenize them into your own NFT. So it becomes a unique piece that you as a landowner who then create these fashion items from can own. And then, you can then license these items that you create, into our world and sell it to our audience. So it's kind of like a microcosm of what we're trying to, do and trying to, get people to understand. And ideally, these items that they create for our world, to my point, right, when our platform is completed, they can then shove it, into that platform and ideally port that to, other world like for example. So that's something that, we're excited about, and, and we're, our team are like, have started working on the past month, literally. So, we're excited to see where that's going, and actually, like, with partners, I hope it's okay to kind of say their name because they were on your show, but watch for the, that announcement with them as well, because they'll be one of the first people that we'll be working with, because they also realize that their strength is not in creating fashionable items for their avatar. So, so they will say,
Right.
hey, maybe you guys are more qualified than us to do that, right? And I would say that when it comes to game or open world creating, developing prowess, those guys are definitely at the AAA level, right? And we're not at the same level as them. But when it comes to visual, especially, like fashion aesthetic on the avatar. I mean, we feel that we are like one of the best in the world. So so it's something that we and we see that they're not the only one facing this issue, right? I mean, a lot of the world have these similar problems. So we feel like, yeah, if we can go in and help these worlds create these assets, through our platform, ideally, that would solve a lot of problems. Be a win-win situation for all parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the listeners who don't know what you're talking about, they have to go back and listen to the previous episode with Life Beyond Studios. That's great, because I did not know you guys were working together, but they are a AAA game coming out, MMO RPG. And to hear that, you guys are working to them to potentially have interoperable, digital assets is great, because I've seen your work with Prada. It looks amazing. And I just had this conversation today with somebody that with all these digital twin, assets coming out with the likes of Dior and Lacoste, it would be great for it to be interoperable, because just like you said, today in social media is very easy, right? Like, I have a video, I can put it on TikTok, I can put it on Instagram, I can put it on YouTube, I can pretty much put it on everything. But to have that same, publishing between all the chains and all the lands, like you mentioned, I heard it's coming. Actually, I actually interviewed another individual on our podcast who's also building a AAA game, and said that technology is going to be here, if not here already. So that's exciting to hear that you're working on something like that to kind of push the space forward.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm glad to hear what you just said, because I think that helps you validate our vision for what we call Altava next. So yeah, glad to hear that.
Yeah, definitely looks like fashion and gaming are leading the way for 2023 in terms of Web3 adoption. And I'm glad to hear that you have a hand in both of those, gaming and fashion. So I think you're in the right place.
We do hope so.
Awesome. So I'm going to put all the links on how to find Altava and reach you and how to collaborate with you guys down below. And of course, in the future, we would love to have you back on the show to talk about all the progresses. I myself would like to travel to Korea and probably do this in person, because like you said, Korea is the fashion capital and potentially even the technology capital of the world.
Yeah, I would love to, have you here, when you do. And actually, I would suggest Korea Blockchain Week would be, a good timing, because that's like the biggest one in the country when it comes to like blockchain related show. So yeah, that around September. So I think if you were to come, that would be the timing I would suggest.
Awesome. That's really soon. Well, it's been great having you on, and I can't wait till the next time.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you.